Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
I remember the first time I became a parent, it was kind of a running line that people would say, there's no manual for becoming a parent. There's no book, no instructions. There is that one book, What to Expect When You're Expecting. Okay. But then once baby is born, what do you do from there? Kind of wing it. We're going to talk about that today and parenting in general from all different angles. And she is an amazing psychologist that works with parents, teens, children, everybody, and getting their lives back on track or where they should be. Gloria Vanderhorst is back with us. Welcome back, Gloria. How are you?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
When I think about this, the parenting thing or the teacher for being a parent is usually your parents. That's where you learn most of it from, right?
That's right. That's right. You get it from your parents and from your grandparents, typically.
Yeah. And that's, God bless them both, but doesn't mean they were right.
Well, they were never trained. They're trained by the same people, by their parents and their grandparents.
Right.
So just generationally, it just keeps falling forward.
And not to get too deep too early here, but many times those beliefs and values get embedded in someone's subconscious, and then they grow up dealing with certain issues unless they get healed from them or they address them. So that can be challenging in itself there, right?
That's true. That's true. We do adopt, and you think about it as very young children. We don't have the variety, the range of thought and reflection. We think concretely, yes, no, good, bad. And so what my parents teach me in that younger stage of development tends to get solidly embedded, and you don't question it unless there's some particular challenge in your life that requires you to question it. You just assume that's truth. That's the way the world works. That's the way we're supposed to function. That's how I treat other people. It's almost magical.
I look back, I know the things, my mom, she's great, but there are certain things that she was very overprotective. So guess what? I became an overprotective parent.
That makes sense.
Took time to realize that. And once I did, I let them fall. It was okay.
Right.
They got up and everything was fine. But how do you become a better parent?
Oh, I think you don't unless there's a challenge. Unless you really get challenged by something around you. Maybe you get challenged by your spouse or the other parent of your children because they come from a different system, so they're going to challenge you. Once in a while, you're going to get challenged by the organizations outside of the household, by the school. Sometimes you're going to get challenged by your neighbors. Why would you let your child do that? Or your child did this to my child and it's not appropriate. So there are places where we get challenged, but I don't think there's a proactive theme for parenting. We do what seems, quote, natural to us. We might reflect on what our own parents did and decide, I definitely don't want to do that. Right? If dad paddled you, you decide, I'm not going to do that to my children. But then you really don't challenge the philosophy that you were raised with, the more subtle ways that you were influenced. You kind of adopt the same things that you were taught, and you just move forward unless you get challenged. Very few people are proactive about saying, I want to learn all the different things that go into parenting before I actually bring a child into this world.
Is it almost like the subconscious minds where you're on autopilot?
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, there's no reason for you to do that research until a problem arises, all right? We all anticipate we could do this, right? We might have to go to school for some other things, but this should be natural. This should just come to me. This should be easy. And then we get surprised. Women, for example, who have postpartum depression and, don't want to nurture their baby. They're shocked at that. They're ashamed of that, right? Or fathers who just didn't realize how difficult it would be, how much their sleep would be disturbed, how 24/7 this object in the household now needs attention and protection. Unless we get challenged, parenting is not something we think about. Though there are a couple of high schools that I've heard that do some marvelous things of giving kids, pairing them up and giving them an apple to take care of, right? An apple has to be monitored 24/7. And they have to feed it and change it, get that life experience that, wow, this is a huge responsibility. You can't just lay it down and walk away.
There's even some schools I know of, one in my area that has empathy baby or something like that, where it's electronic
Uh-huh.
and it's programmed to cry at certain intervals. And it knows whether you're taking care of it or not. You can't just
Oh,
throw it in the
that's
closet
great.
until Monday morning and go back to school. So I think it's kind of cool just to
That's
open
great.
your eyes up
Yeah,
to what is required. What about some parents kind of check out sometimes, where call it a midlife or whatever it might
right,
be, where they just kind of throw up the flag, maybe get divorced and just act 23 again.
right.
How does that look for you?
Well, there are stressors that come into everyone's life. And so on one level, you have to be empathetic with that parent who says, there are just so many other demands, or there are so many fears that have been triggered in me that
Mm.
I just can't cope with the responsibility in front of me with child and household and work environment. So I would say, we start with empathy for that person. And I think that's tough. Lots of times that person gets a lot of rejection, a lot of judgment, and no real empathy. But empathy means I'm interested in what's happening for you, what's underneath the surface. Because if we can talk about that and surface that, then we can problem solve. But if we're just judging that person and telling them what they're doing wrong and getting mad at them, then there's no hope for change. No modification can take place because all they're going to do is defend themselves and stiffen up.
But it's also, you became a parent for a reason, you know, and you have a responsibility, to your child. I look at it that way.
Well, the reasons can vary, all right? Some people obviously become parents because they want to do that. Some people become parents by accident.
Sure.
Some people become parents by violence. So there are a variety of ways that I can become a parent. And if I'm surprised by it, I didn't anticipate, we talked about having children, we're married, but we thought maybe a couple years from now, and then something didn't work and we end up pregnant. It's like developmentally, I'm not ready for it. I didn't plan it in that part of my life. It's a shocker. And now I have to adjust to
Mm.
something that I really wasn't looking forward to at this point in my life. I mean, there's so many reasons that people, both men and women, would struggle with, oh, we're pregnant. We're going to bring a child into the world. How do we adjust for that? How do we prepare for that? Did we want it? Did we plan it? Do we look forward to it? Or is it a surprise? And how do we respond to that surprise?
How about the relationship between the child and parent? How do you navigate? I see it as a delicate blend between being a parent and being a friend.
Mm-hmm.
You also want to be the cool parent.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
how do you strike that balance?
I think it's hard to strike that balance because you're dependent on the way that you were parented. So if
Yeah.
you didn't have that kind of parenting, unless you're really doing good research, and there are good books out there to help people to kind of challenge themselves and dig deeper into what kind of a parent do I want to be. There are training groups out there too
Hmm.
that you can go take some classes about parenting. But it's hard unless you're really willing to dig deeper into your own history, your own thoughts, your own
Oh yeah.
feelings. It's really hard. Parenting is probably the biggest challenge for all of us.
I love what you just said, Gloria, about looking into your history, because that gets you right back to how your parents parented.
Right.
Um, it is a challenge. If I'm going to throw, are you a parent?
I am a parent of
Okay.
one daughter.
Okay. If you were, and I have three kids, two daughters and a son. If
Hmm.
you were, I can't believe I have three. If you were to, if you were to look back, what would you have changed, if anything?
Oh, what would I change? That's a great question. Um, I'm not sure that I would have changed much, if anything,
Hmm.
um, because I take that process seriously. So I'm the one that was reading books, right, and going to classes and talking to people about how did they do this and challenging myself to figure out how to do different things. So I'm not sure that I would have kind of modified anything.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. And you come at it from a different angle in terms of
I,
your
I,
profession. So
well, but I only had one child. You said you had three. And the truth of the matter is that every child gets parented differently.
on
You
a
might
billion percent.
think you're the same, but you're not the same.
Oh, totally, totally. And you learn things along the way. Every child is different. Every
Hmm.
personality is different. You have to kind of key into that, but then
Right.
you learn things along the way.
Hmm.
Um, but I feel if I were to look back, it would be, and this is based on learning about the subconscious mind.
Hmm.
It would have been be more mindful of the things you say and do.
Hmm. Hmm.
And by that I mean those just goofy little comments if you were just joking around,
Right.
how they can stack up in some kids
Yes.
and be internalized as you were being serious,
Uh-huh.
and that could have an impact on self-esteem, um,
Absolutely.
create limiting beliefs. And I really mean those, fun things a parent says, like,
Hmm.
look at your hair. What's crazy today? What are you doing?
Right.
You're just being fun.
Hmm. But it
But
can injure, and particularly if it's something that gets repeated.
yes.
Right? So I'll tell you a story. My daughter, she might have been two, and we were visiting relatives, and this one relative started to call her Cookie, right? And she said, I'm not Cookie. And so that she kept up, oh, you're such a cute cookie. And, how are you doing, Cookie? My daughter just like stood up as tall as she could at 2 feet, right? And just gets this determined look on her face and just yells, I am not a cookie. Right? So we have to pay attention to
Mm,
the feedback that we get. So you might use a cute name, you might begin to tease about a particular habit or routine, and those can really hurt.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
we have to listen to our kids giving us feedback. Not sometimes that feedback isn't verbal, right? Sometimes it's the body posture, right? Kind of hanging the head, turning away, shrugging the shoulders, kind of
Yeah.
just collapsing in on yourself. Those are all signals that, this is not a good connection for me. You're not really being kind or supportive or helpful.
Yeah.
And kids need a lot of support. The world we send them into is actually very challenging.
Now more than ever, not to sound
Mhm,
old, and I'm
mhm,
sure
mhm.
that was said when we were kids too,
Sure,
as
right?
well. But I love what you said about the repetition because it can be for, I would change my kids' names and I would, come up with different
Hmm.
names. And I think that's also because my dad would do things like that too.
Uh-huh. Hmm.
Um,
Just
eh,
lighthearted and teasing,
exactly.
trying to be engaging.
And it can be fun for one kid, but then maybe another one, they're not
Hmm.
feeling it. But
Right.
you need to look at the feedback that you're getting from it.
Hmm.
If they're not laughing along with it, if they're not accepting what you're saying or what you're
Right.
doing. Um, and one thing to never forget, they don't forget.
Right. They don't. But they do want to be connected. They want to be liked. They want to be loved. They want to be connected. It's a matter of finding that spot, that comfort, that challenge that says, this is the way we connect and it has meaning to us. So, maybe it's taking your kid for a walk. Maybe you consistently walk the dog with this particular child so that you have a little time to chat or be
Mm,
silly. They want to be connected. It's a matter of tuning into what helps them to feel connected and being aware of the signals when they say, hey, that's not for me. I don't want
mm,
to connect with you in that
mm.
particular way. Let's try something else.
Yeah.
Don't give up. Remember, they want to be connected. So experiment, try something else.
And it's find the motivation because I do know, my younger daughter who is now 15, she is into art. She's more,
Mhm,
creative and not every
mhm,
day, but maybe once, twice a month.
mhm.
I'll say, hey, you want to draw? Do you want to paint something? And
Right.
sometimes you get a yes, sometimes you get a no.
Mhm,
More times
mhm.
than no, but every once in a while. So I run with those. We
Yeah,
picked
for
up
sure.
different paints and things like that. And
Mhm.
she actually painted a very cool, somewhat abstract design. And I was like, whoa. And I gave her
That's
suggestions
great.
because I'm into that.
Mhm.
And so much that she put it on her wall, which, says a lot.
Fabulous.
Yeah,
Yes.
but just the colors that she used and, you know, it needed a little more outline in an area. And she even
Mhm.
asked me, I'm like, yeah, you know what? You can get a
Uh-huh.
Sharpie and do that.
Mhm.
But every child is different. Then my son is 17 and I took him out with me and my friend and went to a local tavern,
Mhm.
home of the $1 burger, best burger you'll ever have. Um, and he actually asked, he said, "What are you doing later?" I'm going with Gary, my best friend,
Mhm.
and they've been around each other forever.
Uh-huh.
We're gonna go to Tara's and grab a burger. He's like, "Can I go?" I'm like, "Of course you can." And we
Sure.
all had a great time. And
Great.
even my friend said it was a really nice catching up with Jason again. I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
it
that's
was a good time."
great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. I think parents lose track of the fact that kids actually want that connection. They want to be with you. They want to connect with you. They want to be liked by you. And I experience families in this modern age getting their children engaged in so many activities and scheduled from this hour to this hour to this hour that there's no time just to sit down and be together or to do something like painting or playing a game or just chatting, right?
Yeah.
We keep ourselves so occupied, and when we're not occupied, we're focused on the television, honestly. So there isn't an opportunity to connect. We need to shut the television off and miss an activity in order to spend some time, take a walk, all right? Go flower hunting in the woods, challenge your kid to play tennis with you or whatever it is that
So true.
you like doing. Just spend that time.
What you just said, I have an older one who is 28. And our thing is
Mm-hmm.
we play tennis, maybe once a
That's
month,
great.
maybe twice if
Mm-hmm.
we can when it's warm out. But
Mm-hmm.
that's how we connect.
That's
Um,
great.
I do have I have somebody I know who is a single mom of he's now 8 and the other one is 10 or just touching 11.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nonstop activities.
Mm-hmm.
She takes him to lacrosse, soccer, on and
Right.
on and on and on. Well,
Right.
whenever I call her, she's out.
Right.
They're doing something, and that's not to say that they don't have um, quiet time together, but she's always out with them. And I try to drop a hint, and I don't judge, but I'll share my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. I said, why do you do so many activities with them? Like, do you really need to? I mean, you need time to yourself as well.
Well, and they need time.
Yeah.
They really benefit from downtime, time to reflect, time to just kind of hang out in their room, time to be creative, time to be bored, right? Being bored is really a good thing because it challenges me to think about, well, what does interest me? If I had to move myself out of boredom,
Mm,
where would I go? What
yeah.
would I do? What interests me?
Well, you know, based on what we're talking about here in terms of realizing things as a parent, the friend that I'm mentioning, it's my feeling that she does all these activities with her two sons because it's almost as if she's overcompensating because there's no dad in the picture. And he left with issues and
Mhm,
he's literally out of the picture
mhm,
for at least 4 years.
mhm.
I think she feels that she needs to do both, but to your point, they need time too, you
They
know.
need time too,
And
right? And
and
that's not unusual to kind of over program the child, sometimes because of absence of the other parent,
mhm,
sometimes because of our own insecurity. I'm not sure what I would do if I didn't have a place to keep this child active. And I don't want my child to kind of be bored by me or
yeah, yeah,
discover anything negative about me. So if I just keep them programmed, then I never connect with
right.
them. And that's truly sad for a child. You know, we're born connected. We long to stay connected. We spend our life connecting and looking for connection. So we have to take time just to be with our kids.
Mm, yeah, I'm glad you said that. It's so true. Doesn't matter what age they are, even if they're 30,
Right?
40.
Does not
Yeah,
does not matter.
they need their parents. They crave that connection, and sometimes that's missing there. Um, for parents that are trying to navigate this, I know that you're instrumental. I love all your viewpoints on parenting. Somebody wants to reach out to you and need some help in terms of parenting. That's something that you can work with somebody on, right?
That's absolutely right. Right. Yeah, and they
Yeah.
can find me through my website, which is www.drvanderhorst.com. So it's www.drvanderhorst.com.
You know what, Gloria? I realized, and maybe it does exist, but I've never heard of it. But there are diet coaches, health coaches, on and on. I don't
There
know
are
if there
parenting coaches.
are
There
there
are
really.
parenting coaches.
Okay, didn't even know that
Lots of
existed.
times, yeah, lots of times they get involved in situations where the parents have divorced and they're in conflict with each other. So one parent will reach out for a coach, or sometimes both parents can be sent to a coach if there's an incredible conflict.
Mm,
And so they do exist. They do a great job. They provide support. They're kind
yeah,
of well trained in the concepts of parenting and discipline and support. They're out there.
I think that's all great, but I like to think a little bit deeper when I can, and there's things we all do things for a reason. Even our
Right.
kids do things for a reason.
Right.
Um, so, with that being said, you're available. So,
I'm available.
yeah,
Right. I'm happy
absolutely.
to help.
Thank you, Gloria. I appreciate you being here.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.